Alright everyone, thought I'd start this video with a bit of an education or a bit of a run through. This is a tractor or engine dynamometer, well, kindly unknown from a friend of mine at the moment. So yeah, I've had a few my tractors on it, just ones that have needed a bit of a workout or done a bit of light load and need to clear out and that kind of thing, or yeah, run the wood splitter, so they run pretty lightly, just running the hydraulic pump, so it's good to give them a good workout on this. So just thought I'd give you a bit of a run there, give you a rundown of how one of these things works. So you've got two inputs there. One of them's your lower speed, sort of 540 more or less PTO, and the other one is like a high speed input at the opposite direction. So obviously 540 runs, well, as you look at it, it runs clockwise, and if you look at the flywheel of a motor, they run anti-clockwise. So you select either one of those, the one you need, and then inside here, she's pretty much, so there's your little gearbox. You got two inputs. I guess there's a gear ratio in there somewhere, and onto a hydraulic pump. That's all it is. She's just I think that looks to me like a gear style hydraulic pump, and all you're doing with that, so you're pumping the oil, is suction through the pump out here, fixed displacement gear pump, and then on the top here you've got a restrictor valve on the return line back to tank. So and you can just see there's a pressure line that runs from the pressure side of the pump through to the gauge on top. So for a given pressure and flow, so we know what the flow is because the flows will be fixed because it's a gear pump, so always be one rotation is X amount of oil flow, and given under a certain pressure, there's a calibration for that. You need a certain amount of horsepower. So this is how it's worked out on here. So you've got your gauge here, and that's your horsepower gauge, and then an RPM gauge. So pretty much you go on, if you look at that one, I think one is PTO, so the white's the PTO, and the outer is your motor, or basically direct drive RPM. So when you're running something up, you'd look at that gauge and you'd get your speed, and then you have to bring it down to one of these ranges. So you can basically say your kilowatts was at 535, 620, 1000, or 1160. I think that's indicated on that gauge there. There's one of the white marks is actually missing. Yes, you've got, see this 535, 620, up at 1000 there, and then 1160. So you make sure you're running at one of those speeds, and then what the dial will be running up to, that's your kilowatt. Well, yeah, we're in kilowatts here, so that's your kilowatt rating of what the tractor's outputting at that particular time. All run off this big valve at the front with a lock on there, so you can just set it to a certain a certain horsepower absorption and leave it for a while. So you got a couple of big hydraulic filters there on the return line, and of course all that pressure you're making, because you're pumping oil, putting it under pressure, all of that energy gets converted into heat. So that oil tank would potentially get quite hot, so temperature gauge there, and it just runs. Here's a couple of hose fittings. So there's a heat exchanger, just a coil that runs inside that hydraulic tank. So you run your hose water through, and as the hose water is running through, it's absorbing all that temperature out of the oil. So cold water in, warmish water comes back out, and everything stays happy. If you didn't have the water on there, she'd just basically cook to the point of you boil the oil and wreck everything. So that's basically how one of these things works. So probably just after this we'll chuck in some footage of a few of my tractors, and I think one of my old bulldozer getting a bit of a workout. So yeah, check that out.